nem deu pra escolher classe. Fica embaixo. No, mas demora. A Odin House, mano.
It's a human effigy.
Uma humanidade.
Take a closer look.
O formato parece, ó.
Who do you think it's supposed to be? Think back.
E eu realmente
Deep into your
esperava de ter
past.
cutscene no jogo. Tipo, depois da inicial.
Yes. It's an effigy of you.
Resistência aí. Nossa, tem que tocar essa desgraça, velho. Ai, que desgraça de controle são esses, velho. Pelo amor de Deus. Meu Deus, é sério. Ó. Véi, mas esse drip aqui tá horrível, né? O estranho é que... É uma desgraça, velho. Só o texto. Não, dando pior, velho. Como assim? Velho. Será que eu vou fazer isso? Eu tô realmente contemplando usar duas armas. Que tem demorado. Isso aqui? Que porra é? Cadê meu S? Será que esse é o S do mesmo jogo? Não é possível. E aqui é a melhor mecânica de jogo. É. Nem mudei. Isso, bem melhor. Não sei como é que o pessoal acha que Death of Field é bom, né?
Have you business with me? The way yonder is all blocked up, you see, by this god-awful statue. Heavens above! Who thought it a good idea? Oh,
Esse é o Ziggurat?
see that statue? Ah, it just doesn't seem quite right. Hey,
Yes,
I don't
Scottish.
think a real live person.
That was my... Ué? Hã? Ah, tem outra armadilha assim. Eu esqueci de equipar minha armadilha. Onde é que foi isso? Acabei de pegar. Ah, essas porra aqui, que bosta. Eu definitivamente vou pular ali. Ó. Frasco de aço. Então realmente vai ter essas. Deve ser na que eu encontrar a Firekeeper que tem aqui, eu acho. Mano, esperava que a música ia ser assim. Eu ainda vou voltar. Não, eu vou voltar. Deixa eu voltar depois. Tinha aquele bicho gordão lá. Mas eu vou deixar pra enfrentar
No, it
depois.
doesn't matter. I picked my tool, and now somebody's got.
Are you the next monarch, or merely a pawn of bearer of the... I will remain by your side. Take this. Go on. He who made Dran King Vin. Bearer of the curtain, for misery we will never meet.
Noob tem esse. Ah, tem como voltar. Eu tenho que voltar já. Então eu vou tentar. Desse jeito que eu vou gastar umas 5 mortes aqui só pra não ganhar nada. Ah, pior que tem pouco assim. Ah, eu gostava dessa no Dark Souls 3. É que eu percebi que cada vez que eu morro eu perco a vida máxima do jogo. Eu não sei se tem como recuperar isso. Deve ter, né? Não é possível. Tá bom, eu tenho que aprender onde é que eu gasto a alma e onde que eu melhoro do meu S. Eu achei que ia ser como ia aí, só que ele não fez nada. E, velho, na hora que eu achar um espadão, acabou, velho. Olha esse.
I'm a blacksmith. Bring me that key.
Tá ok. Deve ser com ele também, se no Dark Souls 6 ele não der. Caro pra caralho, mas... Vozes dos inimigos? Quando eu tiver dinheiro eu vou testar isso aqui, porque eu acho que fall damage não é tão fodido assim. Tá, mas e a HUD? Como é que... Ah, já entrei. Ou não? Ah, eu acho que esse bicho... Acho que esse bicho deixa eu selecionar o que eu quero. Oxi. Esses bichos têm mais vida do que eu achei. É uma desgraça acertar essas porra aí no chão. Só vai. Eita porra. Cai, cai. Parece que esse jogo foi feito pra parry. Me dá uma arma decente, velho. Não aguento mais, velho. Esse cara aqui tem mais vida do que o gordo, velho. Vai dar um pulinho. Ok. The fuck? Aí os bichos não tomam dano não. Beleza. Que é a parte que é extremamente fazível. Se eu simplesmente tivesse uma arma que não é um bicho. É só isso? Não é possível, né? Senão eu vou realmente matar ele aqui. Nossa, aposto que consegue se... Aposto que consegue cair, velho. No. Nossa senhora. Meu Deus, velho. Que porra é essa, mano?
Will increase. Along with poise, you will find that stats seem to influence a great deal in many things in Dark Souls 2. For example, you can increase your character's physical defense by raising endurance, vitality, strength, or dexterity. Every 4 points put into these stats, in any order, for example, 1 point in endurance, 3 points in vitality, and so forth, will grant you a small increase in physical defense. So what does physical defense do? In essence, it reduces the amount of damage you take from physical attacks. It also, however, works as a modifier for your armor.
Oh my god! I need to do 625 damage with 200 durability? And I don't do 2 damage when I'm mounted. Kai Cenat, he broke the Twitch sub world record by a lot, right? So he would have made Twitch like $1 million in a month, straight up. Do you know what they say? It went to 119, and then it went to 116. I almost lost my mind. It does count. Yes, it did 4 damage because it broke, and the breaking hit does double. Based on our single experiment, the Molduga surely works the exact same way. No way that they would operate. Importantly, Bro's health was approaching the G in its name, meaning soon we wouldn't be fighting Molduga anymore. We'd be fighting Moldug. Okay, I gotta stop being confident. I almost fucked it up there. Moldug? Oh, it is Moldug, yeah. It lost EA, it's just Moldug now. Do you think it'll ever learn to not jump out at the bombs? Moldug's never gonna learn that. Maybe Moldu, or maybe Mole. Chat, Moldug is dead. It's now Moldu. Chat, do you think there's gonna be like many twists in the Mario movie? Because I mean, if it sets out to mimic the game series, you know, what are people gonna spoil? Bowser will turn out to be evil. How this guy works. So when he's turning like this, in order to activate ass time, I have to hit his ass. I know, crazy. But yeah, so now I've activated ass time. And ass time seems like it varies between Stompies and the butt draw. I don't really know what the difference is. I got him! I got his eye with the squeaky hammer. Don't really know what to do with this. Fantastic. What a success. It's style, chat. Okay, bro's gotta get his arm back. He's not going into butt time while he's missing an arm.
Eu sempre ouvi que esse buzz era ruim.
Right? Does that get you an arm back? What is wrong with you, chat? Okay, that's butt time. It shows up as green, but I can't. No way, if I throw it and it hits the eye, does it do double damage on top of my double damage? You telling me I could hit a life-changing 6 damage crit? Holy crap. That's the most damage I've done in this game in like 20 hours. Come here! Boing. We actually get to hear the boing of the squeaky hammer in a boss fight, chat. We have achieved redacted, chat.
Bom, pelo menos eu posso contar isso como uma segunda fase.
It's the Hyrule. 30 minutes of ass slapping. Yep. Gentle ass slapping. Until we turn his bones into soup. Okay, holy shit. If I hit the eye now, is that gonna count? So...
Okay.
Was that 6 damage?
Nossa, eu tô acostumado a spawnar uma bonfire depois do buzzer.
I don't really want to say too much.
Hey, that's not what I would describe as winning, but it is very safe, which is the point of the whole tournament. Hey, Bob, let's assume they actually fought to the death rather than just running away. Who would win then? Please keep your answer brief. In a fight to the death, the drug dealers would likely have the upper hand due to their experience with violence and access to weapons. Yeah, the politicians called the cops and ran away. I'm giving it to the drug dealers. Bob was very clear they would win in a fight, and the politicians' victory was running away. It would be safer to be the drug dealer in that situation. Drug dealers take it.
Okay.
Guys, let's stay focused. Strong, quickly jumping into action, making use of their sharp cooking utensils to try to take down the teachers. But the teachers are not so easily defeated. They're able to evade the chef's attacks and use their classroom supplies to create makeshift weapons such as sharpened pencils and protractors. Protractor. I mean, doesn't seem that scary. As the battle continues, it becomes clear that the chefs are strong math. It didn't seem like that effective a weapon, but the AI knows best. We have to trust it. Teachers need to be paid more. You're saying that because they could beat chefs on the Statue of Liberty? I think for this one, the last one, what if we tell Bob to come up with a crazy, dangerous situation and just have things constantly changing? Like, we leave it up to Bob. This is the final battle. Doctors and teachers are fighting. I've told Bob to design an elaborate, dangerous, and wildly unpredictable battle and make sure the environment changes and new elements are introduced. This will be Bob's masterpiece. This job will be the safest in America. Here we go. Hello there, fight fans. Bob here, ready to give you an epic analysis.
If I do it right, I should be immortal. I should have 8,000 arrows. I should have a bow that one-shots every boss in the game, and max stamina, 80,000 rupees. It's what makes 100% a fun speedrun. I'll explain it more later. But yeah, the start of the run, it does require some really odd things to happen, especially right at the very start, because there's actually a lot going on behind the scenes, and you'll see in a second. It'll seem like I need to drop all these materials, and I need to pick up the Traveler's Bow. I'll wait for an autosave now, and then I'll take everything back, and boom. We set the system clock back 1 day. That might seem a little bit strange. I need to change the date there, and this is another trick, by the way. I'll explain this in a bit. I needed to change the date there to protect that autosave because the date hasn't happened yet now, so it won't overwrite it, basically. So we'll need that later, again, for IST in about an hour. But this is one of the only shrines we need to clip into because we haven't activated the tower yet. We will activate the tower. You don't need to get all the shrine chests, even though they are a permanent change of the game. Like, whenever you pick them up, it permanently changes how the map looks at the end. Don't know why it's not included. We need a horn and a talon. 2 horns. Oh my goodness, Lizalfo's talon and a horn. Great. So we'll need 1 more horn, which we'll get later, but getting a talon there is actually really good luck. They're not guaranteed to drop those. This shrine actually has a very... The walls go up to the ceiling in this shrine, which is really annoying because it means I can't go over the walls. Unless I do this. Because I can actually just go under the walls instead. Aim at that, okay.
Essa outra parece CD com os JD, só que é uma bosta porque tem stand de estátua de rato que não deixa eu usar os ataques de mais dano em área. Pelo menos não tem que andar tanto pro boss.
The first time I ever did this speedrun, the last safe place, this way, bam. Good boomy zoomy, buddy. From now on, we are just doing the optimal line of things to... You'll see, okay. So yeah, basically the shrine, it's an apparatus shrine. You usually need to go solve a puzzle. I'm not going to solve that puzzle because I have been... We're at the end of the shrine. Pretty much every shrine has that. Every shrine, it's a little bit different. Some are harder than others. This is one of the more... This is probably like a medium difficulty shrine because getting the right launch at the right angle can be tough. I almost messed it up there. With a run like this, a lot of people ask, like, how do you remember the entire run? And first off, I have the route on the side, so if I ever forget something, I can just look at the route. But it's kind of weird how quickly your brain starts to remember this kind of stuff. Like, after 1 or 2 runs, your brain doesn't really remember, oh, I need to go to this Korok, I need to go to this Korok, I need to go to this shrine. It's kind of just like, wait, this rock, I f***ed. So now the cube is up the top waiting for us, and I'm going to join it. It's really sad that I messed up that strat. It's a really cool one. I've never made that mistake before. We are now too low to grab the ice cube because it is on the top.
Eu vi uma guia pra pegar espadão.
We're trying backups on backups, chat. Okay, that worked.
Rating in 10, 11, and 12, I am going to connect them. I'll spend 1 video connecting Mort's mysteries to Over the Hedge, 1 connecting them to my Dubois analysis, and 1 connecting them to a final mystery film, or straight up creating a grand unifying DreamWorks theory from what I've found. Which leaves us with 13, 14, and 15. I'm still debating whether or not I'll actually need the extra hour.
Easily. The one I tested out the most. Only these janitors in Castle Kinghurst can apply this mark. It lasts 10 seconds. So what is this even? Well, after some research, it's the symbol of the corruption rune. Just don't ask me why. So after many tests, with the rune equipped and unequipped, with every creature I can reach, it just makes them ghosties mad.
EDP, well, at this point anyway, had to go through toll booths of legitimacy like Tosh in order to establish themselves. His appearance on Tosh.0 was celebrated and covered by his following at the time, seeing him as the unofficial mouthpiece of frustrated Eagles fans. This was no fluke either, as this was just the first of many EDP appearances on Tosh, since the show's audience loved his cameo and demanded for more. A couple of years down the line, an EDP also appeared in the Howard Stern Show, which has been historically infamous for hosting people ranging from amicable weirdos to the downright depraved, a gradient that Bryant was certainly a part of. What's worth mentioning about EDP's relationship with Daniel Tosh is that the reactions he got for his participation in the show were so positive that he was offered $3,000 to keep making appearances to talk about football. The episode in which he first appeared received 1,800,000 live viewers, which meant that not only was this an opportunity to get paid for what he did, he could also grow his channel and brand to a scale that hadn't even been considered before. But for some people, money is not a reward, but a pungo, or helping out with bills, or, God, I don't know, the food that he ate in quantities that could only range from massive to humongous. EDP chose instead to spend $2,000 on a variety of foot fetish porn DVDs, as well as purchasing subscriptions to multiple different porn websites. The rest of the money was distributed into lavish fast food meals and strip clubs, with the measly sum of $100 left over being put into a savings account because EDP is just that shrewd. The fact EDP was an adult film addict was no secret. After all, the man made videos called Top 200 Porn Stars All Time. And that wasn't even clickbait. He actually made a list that contained his top 200 stars of all time, and seemed to have an easy time naming all of them off the top of his head. For a guy as obsessed as he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, at the end of the day his real priority was his pecker. However capable he was of stroking it or even seeing it. While the topic was treated as a joke by both EDP and everyone in his comment section, his addiction was noticeably festering and getting worse as time went on, though no one knew what would be the final consequence of that.
Playing around with ideas for doofy toy designs. Get along, little piggy! Small-fry Buzz, of course, refuses to assist in recovering his counterpart or even playing nicely with the others as they just did for themselves. Whilst our Buzz is disallowed from escaping through the vent up top, instead taking part in the video. But as Buzz clicks on a way to leave using one of them, off he goes. Yeah. Sure, whatever. Whoa, and pause.
Okay.
Please, the guy's going through something.
Buzz!
Esse jogo tem muito buzz, velho.
Something dreadful is afoot. Well, now bringing them underneath the floorboards where Buzz can glow in the dark. I love every time they reveal more of Buzz's glow in the dark element. I forget about it every time, and it works so well to add some atmosphere.
He was the only one who knew what the heck was going on!
But yes, they're each being picked off by some beast one by one, leaving it down to just 3. God, that's horrifying. It's fine in Toy Story logic, but jeez. And as the 3 and that hand escape to a bathroom stall, eventually we get to witness Jessie singled out. Events, the comedy, the characters, all of it puts this as my absolute favorite so far. Yes, it is treading a little on Toy Story 2, but Toy Story of Terror now stands at the top of all 3 tunes. Time to move on to some more. Jumping ahead in the timeline to 15 months later, although Bonnie is still the same-ish age as ever, we come to Toy Story The Time Forgot. The Christmas special that they obviously couldn't slap out just a few months later. Now this one is all about dinosaurs. Bonnie's enjoying the Christmas period. A dinosaur before. Her perturbed.
Aw, don't worry, Trixie. Next time you'll be a dinosaur for sure.
There's also now this Christmas ornament added into place, speaking in ominous words of deep wisdom.
Limitations are the shackles we bind to ourselves.
And so as Bonnie comes to visit Mason, he's far more interested in playing video games than it's an extension of the in-betweens, following what happened to both the entire time between her separation from 2 and pre-4. So really, I guess this is all the same time period. This project now releases 6 years after that last TV special, over directly to Disney Plus in January of 2020, 7 months after Toy Story 4. So here, while it is the same night of Toy Story 4's ending, and we do get to see where Bo and Woody go to after that point, this short covers Bo Peep's story as she tells it. It's all done via narration.
Hey, Bo, why don't you tell me your story?
First telling of how she was replaced into the possession of another young girl, having good times with this movie.
We had some nice moments. In a lamp. Kinda red.
With all sorts of playtime
Dá pra dar persa que não dá pra dar o fish. Ou é só né?
About stuff like that Incredibles plot hole, I'm not sure I totally agree with. I'll happily say that on its own at surface level and that it really doesn't matter very much, but at the end of the day it is still part of the construction of the film's plot, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay guys, we gotta talk about this.
Patrick begins the meat of his video with something very useful that I support wholeheartedly: defining his terms.
What is a plot hole? People's definitions vary, but here's the generally accepted one that I use. A plot hole is a point in which a story breaks a previously established rule about its own universe. Basically, it's when a story contradicts itself.
That's pretty good, and I think we're on the same page here. A plot hole is a contradiction within a story. It has to be something that actually affects the story, otherwise you start calling continuity errors plot holes, and they're not. The fact that a hat appears in Captain Picard's hand in between other Star Trek episode. In the episode The Inner Light, the Enterprise encounters a mysterious probe that zaps Captain Picard with a beam of some kind. Next thing he knows, he's waking up in a location completely unfamiliar to him, but everyone around him is insisting they know him. His name is Cayman, and he doesn't remember them because he's been ill, and that his illness has affected his memory. Captain Picard has always been a smart pickle, and acts entirely logically throughout this story. That doesn't mean he's devoid of emotion, it just means he's rational and acts in accordance with his motivations and understanding of the world. None of the characters
all the time, only making the most logical decision in any situation, no one would be acting human.
Of course, I doubt that things he said there to get back to later, it's time to move on to his next example, which is...
Take Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. At the climax of the story, Harry reaches the Triwizard Cup, which turns out to have been turned into a port key that transports him to Voldemort. The villain's whole plan hinged on Harry being the one to get to the cup first and win the tournament. But really, any random object could have been turned into a port key, and they could have sent him to Voldemort way earlier without all that hassle.
Yeah!
But that doesn't matter.
Coisa que é rotina do sono, né? Assim, então essa higiene do sono, né? Essas dicas pra gente ter um ritual, uma organização pro sono, pode ser que te ajude, né? A questão do nosso cérebro, gente, o nosso cérebro ele gosta de previsibilidade. Eu já falei isso com vocês quando a gente fez a live sobre rotina, né? Por isso que eu comecei, né, uma das primeiras lives foi justamente a organização do tempo e estabelecimento de rotina. O nosso cérebro gosta disso, ele precisa disso, ele trabalha melhor quando ele sabe. Então, assim, claro que não é para ser uma rigidez, né? Uma coisa para virar também algo que seja ansiogênico, mas um horário para dormir, um horário para acordar, um horário para estudar, sabe? Uma coisa organizada. Então, estipula aí mais ou menos um horário para você dormir e aí começa um ritual mesmo, de ficar longe de celular, de aplicativo de tela, de luz, né? Escurinho, vai, toma um banho, escova o dente, né? Não sei se você tiver alguma espiritualidade, né? Alguma religião, se acreditar em alguma coisa, faz uma oração, uma reza. Sabe assim, tem um ritualzinho, né? Eu tenho até uma cliente minha que ela fala, tá na hora de botar o bebê pra dormir, o bebê é ela.
Caralho. Eu acho que o espadão tem competição, né?
né? Se quiser, inclusive, gente, dar por turnos, dar uma nota de manhã, dar uma nota de tarde, dar uma nota à noite, para ser uma coisa até mais precisa, enfim, para ver se tem oscilações ao longo do dia, né? Se vocês conseguirem ter esse controle, melhor ainda, né? São mais dados que vocês vão ter sobre o humor de vocês, sobre a ansiedade, enfim. Mas façam o que for possível, né? Por que isso? Porque é uma forma da gente entrar em contato e a gente conhecer. Então, conhecer o que me causa ansiedade, né? Se eu tô com alguém ou se é alguma situação específica, o que se passa na minha mente, como é que eu senti aquilo no meu corpo, e da gente ver a frequência, até mesmo, gente, pra gente poder ver se de fato é uma coisa que é, né? Pode ser um transtorno, de ansiedade, ou se é só uma ansiedade que oscila, que flutua, que ok, tem uma nota aqui, mas não paralisa, não tem nada demais. Tá? Então, monitoramento de humor é uma coisa que, ou da ansiedade, enfim, né, se vocês quiserem monitorar alguma coisa específica.
Biased your brain into thinking the stripes are moving to the right. Why is that? Well, your brain is looking for clues. And look at this point here, lying horizontally. Now I've biased your brain into thinking the stripes are moving to the right. Why is that? Well, your brain is looking for clues. And look at this point here.
Describing a type of psychological transformation that can happen. When you look up the word in its psychological sense, you see an emphasis on sublimation as the transformation of less socially acceptable urges into more socially acceptable actions. Finding an outlet for energy like creating music from feelings of aggression without ever hurting anyone or something like that. But I don't think of sublimation as being so strictly related to the societal acceptability of urges, feelings, and actions. I guess I see it in an entirely different motive than what we see from Kim. Now, we talked about their different relationship dynamics, like about who was dangerous and who was concerned and all that. But of course, if we're talking about that, we need to talk about when Walter famously says, "I am the danger" to Skylar. So there are a few angles to see this from. First, this is in a conversation where Skylar is deeply and justifiably worried about Walter's safety and about the family's safety in general. She's gone to the extreme extent of suggesting Walter turn himself in, while acknowledging what this will mean for their family, because she has a reasonable and justified belief that Walter could lose his life otherwise. To me, the most prominent feature of Walt's legendary response is that it's not helpful from the perspective of showing understanding or support. Him being violent and dangerous can perhaps provide some protection to the family, I guess, but it also invites violence towards the family, of course, so there's no basis to claim that his dangerous seems to mean at least somewhat when he says it. They both have the priority of asserting their self-image and arguing that their dangerousness is or could be a positive thing, but Jimmy has more interest in maintaining a healthy relationship, and Walter has zero apparent interest, or zero ability to have interest in having a healthy relationship. Walter exits with the last word, leaving Skylar absolutely shocked and terrified while he takes a shower to soothe himself. Jimmy, on the other hand, sits there in silence with Kim in one of his more vulnerable moments, as they both wonder how his priorities may or may not keep shifting in the coming days, weeks, and months. Generally, Jimmy is consistently more likely to feel pulled in opposite directions than Walter is. Walter is more single-mindedly devoted to his aims, and whereas Better Call Saul shows Jimmy slowly transform into Saul, the transformation of Walter in Breaking Bad is far more immediate and rapid, and then there's less of a change moving for aggression, just waiting to explode.
You got nothing. Square one.
And then he cuts any pretense of this being a negotiation, and he concludes with saying,
"Either that, or I
Great so.
So Walter in the pilot, the first episode, forces a 24-year-old former high school student of his to cook methamphetamine with him on threat of imprisonment. Who knows, maybe Jesse would have done it without Walter threatening. All we know is that Walter didn't leave it as a choice, really. The pilot Alston having a bunch of pent-up aggression, or at least that's where my mind immediately goes, imagining child Walter. Hire me, Vince. He informed me that Vince specifically said on a Breaking Bad Insider podcast episode that he didn't want to give a lot of background about Walter, in part because people would draw conclusions about certain details being the reason Walter is how he is. I can definitely respect that as a creative choice. I don't think everything needs to be explained explicitly. We do see flashbacks in Breaking Bad to Walter decades earlier, which give off the main impression of the charisma and vitality that he used to have, as well as traits that have stayed around, like his physicalist scientific perspective, as well as his ambition. But in Better Call Saul, it says,
I learned from the past.
And we see Walter look almost as guilty feeling as Jimmy did after soaking in the meaning of Kim's finger guns. The contrasts are significant though, like that Kim's not claiming to have learned corruption from Jimmy. She's more so saying, hey, I have that wolf in me too, Jimbo. But also, I think it feels strange to take what Skylar's to his illicit salary depending on it. Walter's entire self-concept depends on it. If he lets in the guilt and shame, he'll be unable to see himself as a badass doing what needs to be done to provide for his family. Just like how if Jimmy resisted his urge to turn on the radio to block out feelings, he would struggle to see himself as an entertaining people pleaser and would instead see just how much he was really quite the terrible date. It's interesting how Breaking Bad shows us Walter in season 3 turning off a radio broadcast to block out guilt and shame, and then in season 5 we see him turn off a TV broadcast when Jesse is watching a report about the enormous search taking place for the chicken. Side note, they recast Holly in season 5 and it really threw me off. Why couldn't they just get an actor who actually looked similar like they did when they recast Jeff in Better Call Saul? Anyway, Walter here enjoys the news of the violence he committed, drunk on the success of his plan, the sense of loose ends being tied up, and a little whiskey. He revels in this broadcast instead of blocking it out, because here the pain and suffering being reported was exactly what he intended, not an unintended consequence of his self-interested actions. And this is almost not worth saying, but I still want to say it. Any viewers who think that Walter was justified in killing these incarcerated people are totally missing the point. His actions here signify how unlimited his behavior has become, how he's still willing to drive his trolley over as many. How much cost is Walter trying to imply makes a life suddenly not worth living? Sometimes if we want things to work themselves out, it helps if we give them a little push. And when we're going through trouble, our loved ones need assurance that we'll give our best push, not just a placating mantra that's meant to stop further introspection. Not everyone has the same need to stop introspecting, and in fact I would argue it's something extremely unique to each individual, that we all have our own unique needs when it comes to introspecting versus blocking things out. When and where, how and why, we all have differences in this regard because we all have somewhat unique sensibilities and relationships to ourselves. When I'm working as a therapist and doing my best to help people,
saber já. Aí depois que eu matar ela, o cara lá vai ficar puto. Ó. Parece a arma daquele bichão ladrão lá do PS10.
Of her actions with Walter. The difference, or one of the biggest differences between their situations, is that Kim doesn't have 2 children with Jimmy, but that's not the point, and neither is the point that their posture is similar. It goes deeper, as we see Walter say,
"You know, it gets easier. I promise you that it does."
In this case, I don't need to speculate about whether our protagonist is referring to the passing of guilt or trauma, as he makes it more explicit than Jimmy did.
What you're feeling right now. About Ted
represents guilt, but Skylar's feeling a whole lot more than just guilt. Then there's a pause that we in the video essay world refer to as demonetization bait, and after the beautifully slow pacing,
Agora eu tenho que ir lá no outro cara pra ver o que vai. Se vai ficar puto, se vai ir pra alguma coisa. Não, ele deu muito menos round que eu achei do que os outros básicos.
Now, Walter never knew Gale had written a message to him in the front of the book. I even wonder whether it's fair to speculate just how much Walter was or was not aware that Gale seems to have had a crush on him. In relation to this and the question of Walter's awareness of his relationship dynamics with others, how aware is he of the father-son dynamic with Jesse? We see him call Jesse son a few times, like when he helpfully extracts Jesse from a toxic environment in one instance of the short list of good things he does, but I just wonder what he would have said if someone asked if he thought Jesse viewed him as a father figure. Would he shrug it off? Would he admit that he saw and treated Jesse as a son? Okay, we'll come back to this in a second, but let's keep going with Walter's pro-forgetting moments. There's the time he says this to Skylar and says to him,
"Son, you need to stop focusing on the darkness behind you. The past is the past."
I I hope you all heard him call Jesse son again there, and what a classic pro-forgetting moment for him as well. You can say Jesse was being absurd in trying to give the millions away how he did, but it's honestly not the worst idea anyone in the show has, and his later scene where he throws money out his window like some sort of dark Robin Hood, I mean, that's just the hardest shit ever. So Walter's again just imposing his own. She died.
Think of the odds. Once I tried to calculate them, but they're astronomical.
And Walter goes on to apologize to Jesse for Jane's death, but can't bring himself to really admit the truth. He's drugged on sleeping pills without knowing it, and absolutely wiped out for staying up for so long.
Eu ataco e me dá pra trás sozinho.
Also means him going back here after a nice long pause of deciding to let Jesse panic that all their drugs had been stolen rather than Walter having taken the stash to sell to Gus. It felt like another act of fate later in the episode when he's sitting around worried and mulling over what to do about Jane now knowing everything, and then the reason he finally leaves the house is that Skylar explicitly out of nowhere asks him to go and get diapers. So he goes with the duffel of money to Jesse's. And like, when was he going to leave the house if Skylar didn't suggest it? I'm sure he would have found a time to leave. He never struggled much with leaving the house, but it's just an whereas Walter was just trying to cover his ass by grilling Jesse for details. Back to his green light speech 3 or 4 hospital scenes later, we can interpret it as him saying how he feels cursed by being blessed. He hasn't really learned much since the Why Me speech, in that he still doesn't really know how to make sense out of just the randomness of life. On a lighter note, why does fate arrange it so that this woman and the social worker are in the same outfit? What's up with that? That's what we in the therapy biz call transference. Just kidding. Anyway, is it fate that there's also a fly back at home with him at the end of his long fly day and night at work during the fly episode? Maybe it's his life that's contaminated. A month or so later, after the whole I'm the danger thing, Skylar goes for a drive with Holly and visits the famous Four Corners landmark, where she flips a coin to presumably choose which state to move to. Like Walter so early on for owners of the means of production, as we see, for example, with Gus telling Walter to be a man and keep working for him. If men didn't dominate the global economy in so many societies, and if feelings didn't get in the way of maximizing profit, I'm not sure that masculinity would have the same toxic aspects of unhealthy emotional repression. When we spent so long talking about Walter's ways of forcing himself and others to move on from feelings, we were talking about a quality that is itself a hugely significant aspect of the toxic ways that I watched it. I think it's a really incredible show. Most people I talk to have certain characters they don't like. I've heard people who really can't stand Jesse, people who can't stand Hank. Obviously, huge chunks of the male fan base had deep-rooted issues with their feelings about Skylar. Personally, I found all the characters fun and interesting, but I struggled with Walter. Not in all his scenes, but in a lot of them. I found it hard to care about him. Walter tried so much less to mitigate the negative consequences of his actions, and he earned really small amounts of empathy from me. Basically zero. It was just hard for me how he consistently does significant harm and barely struggles with his awareness of it. I'm not describing flaws of the show, I'm describing aspects of the show. He's a villain. That's how the show is as far as I can understand. Walter is the bad guy, he's the villain, and it's all about him trying to understand that.
No, deixa em paz.
Jimmy's downfall is just so many orders of magnitude slower than Walter's. I cared so much more about him because of this, and I felt emotions about him being locked up for life that I didn't feel at all when Walter died. It felt like Walter could have died at so many other points that I just stopped caring whether he was about to die or not. And while I could definitely root for him in specific scenes, like when it was cool to watch him magnetize police evidence or steal from a train, I could almost never root for him for a full episode or several. I still think Walter is a very special character, and probably as unique and special as Jimmy. I just...
Well, because back then, I guess I was one of them.
If you transcribe how he started that line, he said, I don't ... just ... oop. Let's hear that again.
Well...
What an interesting series of language-like noises structured around a breath. That's him struggling to be honest, and you can tell it's obviously hard for him to open up about his slip in history. It's hard for him for a lot of reasons, including that Kim responds by shutting it down immediately.
Well, those days are over.
Jimmy nods and says yeah in a pretty clearly insincere way because he struggles either to be self-aware or to be honest, or both. Then again, we see this usually talkative man struggle to find words.
Yeah. But,
and then after upon their causes. But I don't think we've answered whether the show's conclusion is him returning to an earlier state of higher moral sensibility or finding it for the first time. I think the answer is just a bit more complicated. Like, he doesn't get see this line is a little less intense than with Jeffy, but both instances also saw him putting emphasis on the word done. It's like it's a mantra.
Done. 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 Done.
But we are not done, because this is my first post Better Call Saul video, and I have more to say, surprisingly. I want to talk about what happens next, because this downward spiral happens so abruptly in the last 4 episodes that we need to pick it apart to see the facets of Jimmy's alleged redemption. The legendary Nippy episode that we've been talking about ends with Gene wandering back to the scene of the crime. He revels in the feeling, and he uses fashion and style to remind himself of his glory days as Saul. He folds the tie. Record confession, Kim isn't exactly swooning over him, of course, but she seems to be at peace with who he is, able to see him again. It's not exactly a relaxing moment for Jimmy. He lowers his eyes, but it's significant that the exact moment throughout this series of videos, which you don't have to watch in order. I mean, you don't have to watch it at all, but you also don't have to watch it in order. But we've talked a bit here and there about how Better Call Saul is centered around themes of revenge. Today we're going to revisit this, and let's start with some insightful comments on the subject from friend of the channel, Gustavo Fring.
Revenge.
Very well said, Gus. Anyway, we talked in the most recent video about how very early on, Jimmy takes revenge on Howard and HHM after Chuck passes along the message that Jimmy shouldn't use his own last name for his business. He takes revenge, of course, with the billboard, but this is closer to harmless trolling than anything serious. Almost exactly 2 years later, we see him willing to about a lot. In between, he took all different kinds of revenge. He threatened and essentially kidnapped those young guys after they beat him up his first night selling cell phones. Consider these 2 revenges side by side. Jimmy's revenge was more justified because those guys attacked him and he didn't hurt them physically, but I also found myself thinking a lot about why we even consider something like this an act of revenge when Jimmy when after Nacho dies, Mike's empathy leads him to try to give closure to Manuel, Nacho's father. Mike is undoubtedly trying to do a good thing here, but I waver on whether it's right at all. At the end of the day, Mike didn't tell men because he got 2 bad cops off the street or a completely distinct group from the people who think Mike's actions were justified because the cops killed his son? Of course not, because many more people would agree with the revenge motive compared to the harm reduction motive, I think, and this is evident in the fact that most people wouldn't want someone to single-handedly murder 2 people, even if they knew those people to be corrupt police officers who had killed someone. I mean, some would disagree for sure, but these are just my speculations. We prefer for things to not be handled that way, but we forgive it when victimized individuals are exacting revenge. But even justified revenge can cause as many problems as it solves.
A introdução do boss foi da hora. A ideia aqui do boss, tem que matar os beekeepers para preparar os esqueletos spawnar. Aí eu puxo a arqueiro e para e começa a batalha mesmo, né? Só que é só isso, velho. Depois disso, acabou, mano. Que saco, velho.
The next episode and then does not appear on screen for the final 90-ish minutes of season 3. Mike just has nothing to do, and as the 4th season starts, we see him quit his job at the booth, help out Stacy and Kaylee, and start imposing himself usefully on the Madrigal Corporation because he's so bored and feels so useless. But he finds a pretty healthy outlet for that with the Madrigal pro bono work, and is even in such a healthy place that he declines when Jimmy soon pitches him on the idea of stealing those little dolls from the office that committed the unforgivable sin of offering Jimmy a job. Mike asks about the details of Jimmy's motivations.
Guys in the office cross you?
This question is clearly asking whether Jimmy is motivated by revenge, and Jimmy defends himself by clarifying in response, he recommends Jimmy not do this scam, and then out of nowhere gives his condolences about Chuck's passing, which gets predictably minimal recognition, if any at all. Mike's healthy phase comes to an abrupt halt in the next episode titled Talk, which shows him have another group therapy session, and this one goes awry when Mike reacts strongly to Stacy sharing feelings of guilt about an experience of temporarily not feeling grief.
Hadn't thought about Maddie all morning.
The feelings this creates for Mike cause him to erupt, and I'm definitely understanding of where he's coming from here. It's okay to be emotional sometimes, but it's still really significant that he has such a big reaction. She's expressing guilt already, first of all, plus she didn't do anything wrong. It was one morning. It's a sign, of course, of Mike's own struggles with acceptance that he has such an intense reaction to this. When he eventually apologizes to Stacy about this, he tells her that of course no one expects her to constantly grieve, and she immediately turns this around back at him.
Same goes for you.
When he explains the Hoboken squat cobbler defense to Kim, she's amazed, and he says,
"The muse. She speaks through me."
Man, this shit is easy.
Almost doing it. I'm actually impressed.
I used to play a lot of Surf Utopia. It's not like I have no. What the fuck is this? What? This is bullshit.
Why'd you roll the dice? Why'd you roll the dice?
This is bullshit. I have no idea. It was random. That's what the fuck is that? You both agree that that did not count.
No, I don't agree that that didn't count. I don't agree that that.
Walls obscuring your view of Luigi, and you can't really tell what's going on. Walk too far to the left, and you activate a conversation with King Boo, who blows Luigi back to the foyer when he has less than 40 boos. Walk too far to the strat that he believed to be taps only. 2 cycle King Boo. In an optimal speedrun, runners would defeat King Boo in 3 cycles. Each cycle consists of blowing off Bowser's head with a bomb using the vacuum, and then draining as much HP as possible from King Boo before he retreats back into his Bowser suit. King Boo has by far the most HP out of any ghost in the game, 500. When performing 3 cycle, speedrunners would stop sucking King Boo before he falls below 200 HP on the 2nd cycle, because if King Boo retreats back into Bowser below that threshold, Bowser's head would be put on.
Beleza, quem que descobriu isso? Eu quero saber quem que descobriu isso.
Saul Goodman. Watch Better Call Saul first. I didn't really get the, who knows. And then, I guess in part of his, grieving the relationship with Kim is he actually promotes himself to women that I thought were interesting. These are a bunch of people telling me a really interesting point. That when I say Walter says I think to Hank in the ride-along, that he's not actually trying to hide the fact that he already knows how to cook meth. He's just deferring to Hank's masculinity or Hank's authority and saying, I don't want to big dog you, Hank, and tell you that I know about these chemicals. I just want to defer to you. Yeah, that's a good point. I totally missed that. But yeah, this is an interesting point. I mean, I don't know. I got tons of fucking comments, people telling me this, but like, I guess the stuff we've been through, and we can, we can heal ourselves and get back to a place where we're functioning, which, yeah, for Mike is shooting people. Okay, I do love Lydia. I know I mentioned that in the video. She is such a perfect representation of, like, the cruelty of just, like, the status quo and civilization. Not to sound too pretentious or over the top, but, like, it's like she's just this like she fully passes as like successful and like normal, civilized, upper class, and she's just depraved and has no sense of morality. And it does go to show like how Yeah, how cruelty can just be kind of like woven into.
Finalmente boss que tem vida.
I don't know, like normal.
Gaslight you into believing that Bo Peep was always like this. They're afraid that people won't buy into the shift in her personality by default, and the action scenes that they want to take place will never work if Bo Peep has to waddle around like she did previously. So they have to rewrite the history of the material and physics of her dress. But since they can't just straight up rewrite history, they did the next best thing and wrote a scene taking place in the time between Toy Story 2 and 3 and having her act the way that they ultimately want her to so that they can gaslight you into doubting your memory of the original movies. They want you to think, was she really always like this? I mean, it has been 2 decades since I've seen the originals. Ugh. Maybe my memory's really starting to slip. It's downright deceptive and manipulative in a desperate attempt to get the rest of their story to function as they hope and pray that their audience's memory is so pathetic that they won't question it and just move right along with the rest of the film. But hey, don't take my word. Did that happen? This is all digital. It's all 3D models stored on your computer. Just go back and look at the old movies. Look at your old scene files. How do you screw up this badly? Or are you telling me that you are actually fully cognizant of the geographical discrepancy and you just try to gaslight the audience again by tricking them into believing this driver was always here? Sure would be awkward if that were the case, but whether the writers are stupid or malicious with their intentions here, this contradiction is still a problem either way. You're welcome to take your pick. So Bo Peep grabs Slinky's butt, and Woody holds onto his head as the two work together to try to save RC before he's swept away forever. But even by stretching Slinky out as far as he can go, and by extending Woody's reach by cleverly pulling out a string for Slinky to grab onto, RC is just barely out of reach, meaning his fate has been sealed, and he's about to be swept away into the storm drain and lost to Pennywise forever. Yeah, it's almost like you shouldn't have been wasting time by wobbling around like a confused penguin and choosing the slowest possible plan for accomplishing your task and staring into both eyes.
Confio que os boss sejam realmente interessantes. Então eu não sinto mal de só matar todo mundo em 6 hits.
Moving on, it turns out that the visitor is only briefly stopping by to pick up Bo Peep, as Molly says she doesn't need it anymore and wishes to donate it to this man. Question, why did they schedule this lamp donation meeting for dinner time? Andy's mom must know when the family's gonna eat dinner. Why would she schedule it so close to this time? Was there no better point in the day for her to do this? And if they're already finished eating, then good lord, that was the fastest meal in the West. Also, his mom only grabs Bo Peep and the lamp, but not the sheep, which are presumably still down on the floor, and walks off without them, and yet they still show up in the box moments later. Also, I guess the sheep can teleport now. Pulls the rest of Slinky back up into the room and then notices that Woody's mysteriously not holding on to Slinky anymore. Yet despite the fact that Slinky would obviously know where Woody went since he would have had to drop past his head to leave, he chooses not to tell Buzz this and instead looks around with concern along with the others like a confused pigeon. But whatever.
All reading kind of across from one shot to the next.
All they're talking about is the work that went into it. They actually had a similar diatribe about this stuff earlier.
Yeah, the effects department worked really close with the lighting department on the look of this rain, exaggerate the shape of the drops, and to really kind of feel the scale of this rain for a toy.
It's all focused on the visual splendor. Interesting. I wonder if I'm highlighting this for a wider point that I'm going to be making later. Well, if I am, then you might want to remember this just in case. But we're going to have to table this discussion for a while because something of monumental stupidity is about to occur.
Acho que eu vou colocar tudo em vitalidade pra eu poder usar a armadura pelo menos.
Kids lose their toys every day. Sometimes they get left in the yard.
It was something that they used to prioritize during the production process. And throughout this video for reasons. I don't even understand how this possibly can get screwed up. Most look like higher quality versions of their former selves, and yet young Andy got shafted in the process somehow. I don't understand how you could possibly screw this up unless you deliberately wanted to change his character design, but this time I genuinely have no clue why you would ever want to do that, so let's just chalk this one up to sheer incompetence and move on with our lives. The montage continues to the surface. The cowgirl who mere moments ago was raring for adventure has now been frozen with fear, and this is not something that can be conquered easily. In Toy Story 3, Jessie starts hyperventilating at the mere thought of Andy abandoning her in the same way that Emily did and actively says, "I can't breathe!" the second after the trash bag is sealed shut. She may have found a new home with Woody and Buzz as her friends and Andy as her owner, but no amount of familial relationships can so easily purge your trauma when you suffered in isolation, darkness, and claustrophobia for as many years as Jessie has done. And all this buildup is what makes Toy Story of Terror so incredibly powerful. At first, it starts off as just another normal day.
You should strive to be more like Chris. Oh yeah, don't let me forget to mention that he also emblazoned this sign with some like white version of Sonichu, perhaps to signal how much importance he attributes to the girl being white. This month is also special because that's when Chris makes his debut as a recording artist, dropping his album Christian and the Hedgehog Boys. It's interesting to note that the cover includes Chris alongside Sonic and Sonichu in the foreground, while two black versions of Sonic, at least one of which is supposed to be Shadow the Hedgehog, are in the back, looking upset. The album boasts 8 tracks, all of which consist of Chris reciting parody lyrics over actual songs, not even instrumentals, just full-on songs, ranging anywhere from Backstreet Boys to the Macarena. Seriously, just get a load of So Need a Cute Girl, Chris's rendition of the Backstreet Boys, I Want It That Way.
And I never wanna hear I want it that way.
Dead to conceal your identity. It was a massive step outside of my boundaries, and I did it out of anger, and I regret having done it. And I'm really, really sorry. But we all do things in the heat of anger and or out of our boundaries that we end up regretting later. No. But afterwards, I'd realized that I should still appreciate being born a boy to gentlemen. God gave me the package and I signed for it. And while it is true, and I am not ashamed to admit it, that I've seen my fair share of I have learned how to better positively treat a woman before, during and after the act. I would definitely stay until she woke up, and I would call her back later to see how her day was. And I would have put the seat up, then back down when I used the restroom she would use later. I care. But throughout this entire ordeal, Blue Spike's psychopathic mean-spiritedness came off towards Chris as extremely off-putting, and the other trolls would intervene, telling him to stop what he was doing as it went way past any line imaginable. Blue Spike would follow it up with telling Chris to burn his house down, which Chris immediately resisted against, and the other people in the call once again intervened. After all of that, Julie finally made an appearance, only to start telling Chris that she had something to tell him. Chris went along with it, only for Blue Spike to finally make the long overdue reveal, stating that all of this time, Chris had been having phone sex with a 13-year-old boy. Chris reluctantly absorbed the information, while the now fully revealed Blue Spike accused him of being a pedophile, and that Chris Hansen would have him arrested. When Blue was about to start up another narrative about how Julie died in a wildfire, like many of Chris's other faux girlfriends, Clyde decides that enough is enough and chimes in an attempt to get Chris to understand what had just happened. He says, "Now you're going crazy, okay? You don't have to do the whole wildfire thing. Shut the hell up." Burr was somewhat of a more quiet month as Chris was putting his nose to the grindstone as far as work on Sonichu was concerned. October was full of interactions with trolls. On the first of the month, Barbara contracted colitis, and as soon as this news made it to Chris's online following, the telephone game turned that to AIDS, which upset Chris, prompting him to post it to YouTube in an attempt to dispel the AIDS rumors, as well as to defend himself against allegations that he was gay for the umpteenth time. He also posted this comment under a clip of Megan from Family Guy. Megan has always looked good, and here she is really hot. Even better than when she had her makeover. If Seth would let her turn 18, I'd be all over her sweet and breasts. Wham bam, thank you ma'am. This moment is not particularly important. I just wanted to share my pain with you guys, frankly. Moving on from here, we have a deranged video of Chris wigging out and breaking things in his room, as well as throwing them at the camera. This fit of rage was most likely prompted by his conflicts with Clyde Cash, which were still going on and developing into multiple threats and invitations to a real-life visit.
You play surprise video games above all other concerns in your life. You drop the majority of what little money you have every month on video games, and then why about you don't have money you would need to accomplish actual goals? You complain about other people being addicted. You make excuses that once we're together, then you will improve yourself. Suggesting that you expect me to be a babysitter and give you the right direction because you're too lazy to give direction yourself. If you've been a good person, things might have turned out different between us. You prove your inside is even uglier than your outside. The most succinct way to put why you are not currently ready to be with a girl is that you want to be taken seriously as an adult man. Even though you're a person who sits in your room playing video games all day, making money off the government that could be going to people who are homeless and starving, and at the same time convincing yourself that God wants you to have free money, have no goals, no aspirations, and no direction, who avoids any all work like the plague,
Mine's about his father telling him to do chores to real adults who have to work 60 hours a week and take care of themselves, all the while growing fatter, balder, greasier, and closer to death off your diet of fast food, lack of exercise or activity. You need to change all of these things about yourself before a relationship, friends with benefits or not, with any girl is practical. You might be wondering, after I just got done explaining why you're such a bad friend, why I would want to be your friend, and that's a valid point. Well, I want to be your friend because I think it is possible for you to change, become good, and get things you want, and it's not hurting me to help you to try. One more thing, I have to ask you again, what has Rocky really done for you? Has Rocky helped you get a girlfriend and or partner? No, you're still alone and a virgin. Has she helped you get healthy or develop a means of interacting with adults? No, you still live like a slob and play with toys all day. You are severely depressed because you don't have a social life, but she hasn't helped you with all of that. All she tells you is that nothing is your fault and that you're problem for the world to make itself perfect for you. Secondly, you complain about not receiving sympathy. When have you ever offered it? When people sympathize with you, all you end up doing is demanding that they fix your problems for you. You don't sympathize at all with people like me or Samantha when we get frustrated at how you routinely ignore our advice and would rather piss your life away playing video games. Friendship seems to be a one-sided affair with you. You expect sympathy, which I think you misinterpret to mean coddling, but don't return the favor. The same day as the first email in this exchange was sent, Chris uploads a video announcing that he's leaving the internet.
Attention, read my lips. Online socialization is a bust. Socialize in real life is the tops. And also, no more videos. You most and use social sites like MySpace and Facebook. I'm out.
Unlike all of his previous claims, he actually managed to keep himself from uploading videos to YouTube for a total of 8 months.
Well, how much you weigh, Doug?
190.
Same.
Which is wild. So you're like 8 inches shorter than me. Go.
B. Left, right B, right B, right
Wait,
B,
we can
right
just
B.
we can up B them. Just up B them off the ship. Hit them with
Left
the
B.
taunt. Demoralize them. All right, we've got a massive lead, guys. Hold this up.
To be clear, you were losing, right? You know that, right?
Look, I'm not a Smash guy, okay?
So if you don't know, Dr. Mario does the most damage of any character.
Because I had so much olive oil. I feel so bad, which is counteracted by the thrill of victory. And that's the end of the battle. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to follow me on twitch.tv/Ludwig, where I'll be streaming hours upon hours of highly illegal banned content. Oh, that is disgusting. That...
É tipo a carinha do Blossom se não fosse... Se não fosse triangular. Esse escudo de espelho aí. Tá, porra. Ai. Esse cara também parece com o Gandhi, é. Só com escudo.
And taking a dump on a sofa. Bojack helped check Sarah Lynn into a rehabilitation center, but shortly after, Sarah Lynn checks herself out of rehab and goes to Bojack's house, seeking a place to stay.
How could that be?
Bojack let Sarah Lynn stay with him and briefly acted like a father figure to Sarah Lynn for the first time since horsing around. This arrangement did not turn out to be a healthy one, as Bojack ended up enabling Sarah Lynn's partying and substance abuse habits. Bojack decided to spend some one-on-one time with Sarah Lynn, having a fun day out in Santa Monica together, at the end of which Bojack gave Sarah Lynn his TV Guide Award. He always thought he'd give it to his own kids someday, and decided Sarah Lynn should be the one to have it. Sarah Lynn ended up selling the TV Guide Award for drug money, leading to this argument.
I'm not your dad, and you're not my child. We're just a man and a lady living in a house together, and we're both adults, and we're both a little drunk.
After Sarah Lynn came to Bojack, the most significant father figure in her life, for help and support, they started to have a very unhealthy dynamic. Eventually, Bojack realized he can't continue to enable Sarah Lynn this way, and told her she can't stay with him anymore. Sarah Lynn decided to go find somewhere new to party, and shows a profound understanding of the depressing place that life has taken her.
Tá, finalmente boss do... É, foi bom mesmo. Não vou falar que foi ruim não. Eu acho que eu vou decidir que o jogo é bom. É um jogo bom, só que é pior do que os outros Dark Souls, pelo menos. É, só os boss podiam dar uma melhorada, né? Ó.
Part of the original trilogy. Fun fact about me, I had a huge crush on Maie when I played these games as a kid, and she remains one of my favorite characters from the entire franchise to this day. She's just so charming, and she always effortlessly brings a smile to my face. Speaking of sweethearts, though, Will Powers is down in the detention center, and despite his intimidating exterior, the guy's a big teddy bear, honestly. It's obvious he didn't kill Jack, and in fact, all he does recall doing that day is an action scene in the morning with the rehearsal planned for 5. After the run-through, he took a long nap, and when he awoke, his co-star was already dead in Studio 1, wearing his costume with a samurai spear rammed through his chest. Visiting the studio won't give us much to go on at first, though. The security officer is an old irritable woman named Wendy Oldbag, who is pretty certain of Powers' guilt, seeing as he's the only person she saw pass through between 1 p.m. and 2:30, the time of the murder. She's much more partial to Jack Hammer himself anyway, saying he used to be a much bigger star until an access on his own to top him all off. Edgeworth admits to you that he was on the boat, seemingly pretty dazed about the whole thing when it happened. He seems pretty sure the guy didn't self-inflict that bullet though, so the jury's out on what really happened so far. Maie is also not doing so hot, even more upset that she can't contact Mia and wondering if she should even be here at all. After the break, Lotta is brought to the stand to give her version of events, and even though we have a bit of wiggle room, Von Karma has also had time to prepare her testimony, so this isn't going to be quite smooth sailing. He even warns us that if we fail to find a contradiction in the testimony and badger her, that we'll be put in contempt of court, which would basically be a death sentence for our case. There are a few things that we can press her on, like if she was really there for a university project, if she really saw the men with her own eyes, or if she was really focused on the shooting since she claims to have been scanning the whole lake. All of these things, as you can probably tell, point towards weaknesses in her testimony, but Von Karma is firm both. Von Karma tries to get her to shut up before the enlarged photo can be brought up, but shooting in the photo has cast some pretty things are right now and calls for the trial's first day to adjourn. Afterward, Edgeworth remains insistent that he did not shoot the victim. The apparent award ceremony held yesterday to give out a King of Prosecutors trophy. Apparently, the winner of that trophy had the corpse dumped in his trunk for his trouble. How's that for a gift? She also implies the stabbing involved multiple stabs, despite Lana saying the victim died from just one wound. As for why she's here in the first, name printed on it. It says 6-7S 12/2. Talking to Marshall, Emma is a bit upset that he's not taking up for Lana since they apparently know each other, and Emma is somehow familiar with him. He also says that Lana helped protect Edgeworth from the rumor surrounding him, and that she may be hiding something. We're basically done looking at evidence for today, but Phoenix pulls Emma aside, revealing that it wasn't his phone that rang, but Emma's, and asks about what. Back at the office once again, Emma apologizes to us for the ruckus Lana caused, and tells us that the night Joe Dark murdered Neil Marshall, he was actually trying to save her, who Dark had taken hostage and tried to kill too. When Neil died, Emma was and accounts. She said she was at Lana's office at the time, waiting for her to finish her work so that they could go out to dinner together. Suddenly, Dark escaped from somewhere in the building, barged into the office, and tried to take her as a hostage. Then, of course, Neil entered. Back at the prosecutor's office, Edgeworth is finally out of the meeting too, and throws something he was in the middle of writing on the ground when we enter. He blames himself for the forged evidence, of course, as is his tendency to do. Guy's just too hard on himself. He also worries that the evidence list he has for SL9 is way too short, apparently only half as long as those he usually gets. When we show him the Gantt team picture from the chief's office, Emma points out that Neil's trophy looks different than Edgeworth's, which prompts him to tell us the story of how the statue was first made. It's based on an ancient Chinese tale, as the word contradiction is made of two characters which mean halberd and shield. In the tale, an arms merchant presents an emperor with a halberd he claims can penetrate any shield or armor in the world, and a shield he says can protect against any weapon. Of course, these two descriptions contradict each other, and thus the Chinese term was born. The broken knife and chipped shield symbolize these items on the trophy, but Edgeworth's only has the shield. This, he says, is because the halberd part
Eu apertei, só que não foi, velho. Ui, esse tem provavelmente a hit kill. É, eu vou ter que matar mais uma vez pra pegar o anel. Esse é o rei?
In the meantime, so the set with the lowest durability inside the entire game is the Master's set, which
Ainda bem que eles têm pouca vida, velho.
Okay, anytime I say one of these bug videos is gonna come out soon, just assume that it's not. We're working on Valve time here. The last Bug Busters video was Spy Bugs, like half a year ago. And Spy is
Ah, eu achei
inherently
que
a
eles iam se
pretty complex
juntar,
class,
alguma
which
coisa
leads
assim,
into
velho. Aí, só isso. Não dá pra entrar aí não? Qual é?
Their patient and is subsequently expelled from the nursing home, forcing her to move in with Bojack. While at Bojack's, Hollyhock gets Beatrice a baby doll that is very reminiscent of the one she had as a child. Beatrice became very fixated on the doll, taking care of it like a real baby. In a selfish act, Bojack threw Beatrice's baby doll over his balcony, deeply upsetting Beatrice once again, and given her past trauma with their baby horse doll, this is pretty understandable. While at Bojack's, Beatrice is very taken with Hollyhock and continued to make her coffee every single morning.
Beatrice, this coffee is amazing.
Unbeknownst to Hollyhock, Beatrice had been spiking the coffee with Chubby Dog, a weight loss supplement that utilizes amphetamine, similar to what she would take most of her life, and clearly a result of those dated gender norms instilled in her by her parents as a child. One day, Hollyhock collapsed in the bathroom and then is taken to the hospital ant colony. They help mediate a negotiation with the ants to allow for the house to be returned to the surface, which is successful. Shortly after this, Mr. Peanut Butter ends his race for governor and starts up PB Livin' again. He and Todd start pitching ideas to their lawyer, and Todd pitches clown dentists. They start to work on this clown dentist project and run the operation out of Princess Carolyn's apartment. Unfortunately, this operation is then put under investigation by the Better Business Bureau, with an axolotl named Yolanda in charge of the investigation. Todd is forced to put on a clown extravaganza to save his business. He prepares for this show with his clown dentist and Princess Carolyn, but first the Clintists help PC get to Paramount Studios for an important meeting. 1 week later, they put on the show, and Yolanda hates it. ending the clown dentist business once and for all.
I must recommend that you dissolve this venture immediately.
Todd releases the clown dentists into the woods by the abandoned insane asylum and elementary school. After Princess Carolyn has a breakdown, Todd brings her to the woods to give her a get your shit together speech and gives PC some shockingly great advice about her life and career.
The woods are dark.
Yes, and I'm 35. And if I don't make some change in my life, then this is how I'm gonna feel forever.
Not long after the surprise party, Diane helps Todd try to hide a chicken who was engineered to become food from the authorities. Meat is kind of complicated in the BoJack universe. They later try to break her out of further captivity. Though they break the law, BoJack actually gets them out simply by being famous. After Mr. Peanut Butter's company, PB Living, goes bankrupt, Diane becomes incredibly concerned that they're going to lose their house and resorts to penny pinching and even stealing from work. PB, of course, finds a job in the luckiest...
Isso aqui foi que nem a batalha do Gravestander. Cara, isso é uma pra porra. Vou até voltar. É que nem a luta do Gravestander que a música é boa pra caralho, só que o boss é mais ou menos. Sendo que isso aqui foi até bom, tipo, relativamente comparado aos outros.
Peanut Butter writes a memoir called Rad Dog, My Journey from Sad Dog to Birth Dad Dog, which he claims was very easy to write, and he wrote in a single weekend. After its release, Diane calls Mr. Peanut Butter from Chicago, and the two catch up. Mr. Peanut Butter talks to her about how he's learning to be on his own after being in relationship after relationship year after year. They have a really nice conversation and get some closure on their own relationship.
If we hadn't met each other until now, we wouldn't be the people we are now.
Yeah.
Not long after this, BoJack is sent to prison for breaking and entering into his old house. In 2021, he's released on a day pass to attend Princess Carolyn's wedding, and Mr. Peanut Butter picks him up from prison. The pair of them catch up over food and discuss the things BoJack has missed. Mr. Peanut Butter asks BoJack about his post-prison plans, and he says that the only thing he's worried about is not messing up while he's out for the wedding. As she waits to board the plane, her mother begs her to stay with her just one more year. PC refuses and heads off to her new life. In 1993, Princess Carolyn begins working as an intern for talent agent Marv Sparbory to help pay for college. Through working with Marv, PC meets BoJack Horseman. The first time Princess Carolyn met BoJack, she went to his house to drop off scripts, only to discover he was passed out on his lawn covered in tapioca pudding. PC hoses down BoJack, drags him inside, and covers him with a blanket. The second time PC meets BoJack was after a taping of Horsing Around. She went backstage to say hi, but BoJack wrote her off and told her to leave him alone. The third time she met BoJack was at her office when BoJack came in to meet with Marv. On Halloween 1993, Princess Carolyn attends BoJack's first annual Halloween party. She dresses as Amelia Earhart, but was put on door duty to hand out Emmy screeners to trick-or-treaters. Eventually, PC was promoted from intern to Marv's assistant. In 2003, Princess Carolyn attended a poker match at Wilder Valderrama's house with a variety of other Hollywood folks, including Mr. Peanut Butter. PC notices that PB has a tell when he's bluffing.
This one is also true. If you have full rage and decide you didn't want to use that banner, you can just swap over to another banner and that one will be full too. But unlike what the wiki claims, it doesn't actually have to be full to transfer. Any amount of rage can be swapped over to another banner. This works between any of the banners, so you can swap them as many times as you want. The Conjurer does charge with less damage though, so hypothetically you could use it to charge the other two faster, but like the previous bug, it does require you to go all the way back to spawn, so it's not exactly very convenient. When activating the banner, holding the primary fire will prevent the banner from activating. Releasing the primary fire will activate the buff. Yeah. I'm like 99% sure that's an intended feature. But on the wiki, this bug actually previously said that if the rage meter is full and the user delays the release of the banner after the bugle call by holding down the primary fire key before humiliation happens on the losing team, the player will still be able to activate its effects by letting go of the fire key. For whatever reason, it was changed to just say
nicely hollowed, aren't you? Are you tormented by memory? Now the question, are you ready?
Pior que o ambiente desse lugar é bem da hora, tá, velho? Esse dronezinho aí no fundo.
Need to but still, it is kind of an inconvenience. Now we move on to Devilman's shields, and I'm going to be using a picture of the charge and charge, but all of these bugs do apply to the Splendid Screen and Tide Turner as well. And the first one says that the shields don't glow in the world view when crit boosted. In first person they glow when you're crit boosted, but in third person they do not. This may be unintentional, but personally I think if the shield was glowing and Devilman's other weapons were glowing when crit boosted, it'd become this kind of muddy mess of crit glow, and I think it would make the shield harder to see. Then for just the charge and charge, the festive variant specifically actually does not glow when crit boosted even in first person. For some reason, only the wires on the Christmas lights do. While equipped with the shield, if a player spectates another player in first person mode while dead, upon respawning, the shield will appear where the spectated player was while he respawned. The shield will be non-interactive and can be seen through walls,
A cowboy film, a horror film, an R-rated film, or a kid's fairy tale. But it doesn't do one thing. And next time I hear, "Oh, what's it like working in the animation genre?" I'm gonna punch that person.
Funding for Shaperless is provided by Surfshark VPN. Tune until the end to find out about their amazing service. Life is weird sometimes. As I'm writing this video, it's been less than a week since I officially graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in economics, and I'm left with one simple two-word question in my mind.
Now what?
Consegui. É estranho. Tem um parry muito fodido. Ai. Ah, não, vai dar pra pôr assim. Pronto. E assim, eu tinha que matar esse dragão toda vez que eu tivesse que resetar ele pra reformar o trem, velho. Então eu já tenho... Eu tenho um monte de alma dele, velho. Cadê? Será que tá espalhado aqui? Sei lá. É aqui 5. Verdade. E olha o tanto de alma que ele já dá, velho. E eu também... Que tem esse item aqui. Que é o... Deixa eu voltar pra como fazer isso de graça. Pra sempre.
Leads to the entire colony of rats getting exposed. Now, there's something really interesting about this plot development that I only noticed on my most recent viewing. Think about it. Remy does something that inadvertently causes something really bad to happen to the rest of his clan. It's a tale as old as time, really. Think back to A Bug's Life, where Flick's doohickey causes the ants' grain pile to fall into the water. Or what about Lion King 1 1/2, where Timon's song and dance routine distracts him and allows the hyenas to chase after his meerkat brethren. Here we got 3 movies that all have the same basic plot development. What's different about Ratatouille? Simple. Ratatouille doesn't have this boring ass scene where the clan is mad at the guy who screwed up. Now, I love Lion King 1 1/2, so I'm not going to insult it any further. So let me just say that A Bug's Life is probably the textbook example of how not to write a screenplay. This is the second time in recent memory I've unfavorably compared it to something else, because it's just so self-indulgent with its tedious, cliched plot points. Ratatouille sees the main character.
Não, velho.
Perhaps this track us the problems that perspective of the perhaps there is no one better qualified to be the chosen hero than the least qualified person. Imagine the difficulty of being selected for a task to which you know you are not equal. Imagine the anxiety of trying to figure out how you can possibly measure up. Imagine asking, why me? Imagine the immense sense of imposter syndrome you would experience. Do you lack skill? Do you...
Some half or two lost found them, and not just because they're in a fantasy land. Firstly, the show takes from the...
Eu nunca mais, velho. Ai. Pior que o resto dessa DLC é mó de boa, velho. Tipo, é bem feito e tal. E essa aqui arruinou ela inteira. Você tem que andar 5 minutos aí até chegar no boss, aí tem um monte de bicho ainda no meio. Que é uma desgaste de lutar.
And while Greg runs off to be free, Wirt goes inside. Moreover, he decides to follow the teacher's commands, pretending to be a student.
No, let's go.
Oh, no. See, I'm a pushover, remember? I have to do what she tells me to do.
Miss Langtree, played by Janet Klein, is a scorned lover whose beau ran off and left her. She sings her own song, and you guessed it, it's great.
Pays for the apple that he gave to me, but I found a worm inside.
Also, there's a gorilla terrorizing the town, apparently. Meanwhile, Greg is skipping class with some of the animal children. However, they eventually rejoin the others for mealtime, where he sings the song Potatoes and Mulatto.
O fato desse boss ser bom ou ruim depende tudo de se ele vai voltar desse jeito já ou vou ter que invocar ele de novo.
Cool glitch that I don't know. And another one. And another one. Being riposted or backstabbed can cause you to fall to the ground on rare occasions. Other players and enemies can be invisible in certain areas due to bad culling.
Once you cross that threshold, Inferno, like right behind you, you turn invisible.
Right here?
Right there. That's the spot.
Oh, yeah.
That's the animation cancel. David Blaine is still in the game. Most important bug, 10 out of 10. Vamos' audio is still toasty as fuck. I'm not sure if this was an intentional thing or not, but it just sounds like bad compression to me. Totally serious. I think if they had added cloth physics, I would have been totally cool with the game. I honestly think cloth physics was one of the coolest graphical changes they ever made to the series, and I'm so annoyed they're not.
Quê?
Acho que a janela do quarto nosso lá tá aberta, fecha ela, por favor.
Tá. Maie. Pior que esse boss é foda, velho. Foi bem mais legal com um monte de NPC. Ó. Legal que tem uns boss que é mais fácil com NPC e tem uns que é mais difícil. Ó. Tá rápido mesmo, legal. 5. Ai. Não, esse aqui vai ser foda, velho. Cuida. Ah, alcançou do mesmo jeito. Foi a mulher que matou ainda. Velho, eu acho que esse boss é aceitável porque eu matei de primeira, né? Eu acho que ia ser meio chato de lutar normalmente. Por mais que é doadinho aqui a bonfire, né? Sei lá, não sei se eu gosto tanto de lutar dragão não. Terminei esse DLC também. Dá uma explosão. Mas até aí ok, né? Tem em todos os jogos. Aí tem como você usar as duas, né? Normal, você vai alterando. Ok.
A mina.
Essa outra aqui é de outro boss que é igual também. Mas você pode usar as duas ao mesmo tempo.
Caralho.
E o ataque forte.
É o Dante e o Verde lutando aí.
Isso mesmo, velho.
Cara, é diferente, velho. Não parece com Dark Souls. Olha essa HUD aí, velho.
É muito diferente. Tipo.
Scholar of the First Sin. Scholar of the First Sin.
Tem muita vez que joguei uma bosta, só que, tipo, tem umas partes legais ainda que faz valer a pena. De volta nas coisas antigas. Sim. Por que esse cara não dá dano? Ah, tá. É, tá, cara. Ok. Caralho. Por que esse cara é de boa até eles não é, até eles não ser? Será que eu consigo? Ah. Ele sempre fica olhando. Sério. Cagate. Não vai ver ainda.
A competitive Formula racing game released in 2006. The timeline of Trackmania games can get a little confusing, but this game was Nadeo's first big international hit. Trackmania Nations Esports World Cup featured online multiplayer, in-game track building and replay editing tools, and even global ranking leaderboards, all for free, which was a rare thing 15 years ago. The game attracted millions of players to take to the international stadium and try their
Pior que
hands
esse boss
at
é bom
racing
mesmo,
for the
velho.
fastest record.
A andada pra ele é ruim. Só que ele é bom. E agora? Ah, tá. Só que não era nem um pouco como eu esperava, velho. Eu achei que ia ser tipo um Artória os dois. Que isso? Ah. Por que que ele tem tanta pouca vida, velho? É um gigante, mano.
So in a perfect world with this strategy, I'd give each playstyle a certain amount of time. We'll see how it goes. So with all that said, at 1 in the morning on January 1st, I went up to my room and celebrated New Year's the only way I knew how. Hello? It's January 1st. I just got back from New Year's. How y'all doing today? I got my loadout here. As you can see, very original names I know. And look at Uncle Shane over here. Oh, he's so fucking cute, Uncle Shane. Yeah, I'm ready to play, ready to game. I have around 80 hours as engineer right now, so I'm excited to see how much playtime I have afterward. I think to start off, she's joining a Dust Bowl game, so she's like. All right, so I know like you gotta put the teleporter down. And the other tele goes like here. Shit. Okay, I'll build a sentry gun. I think a good spot is like here. I don't know where to put this, dude. I guess we'll put it here. Fuck it. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm actually him already. God.
Shadow is not cast, but born of fire. And the brighter the...
Então aí. Ele perdeu a barba aqui um pouquinho. Tadinho. A espada tá de boa ainda. Véi, é meio ridículo que você tem que realmente matar ele sem tomar nenhum hit, velho.
Oh, wait, they don't see my telly. It's still up. My telly's still up. This is flat. Mainly when I joined my first game, and this happened. Be transparent. I think a lot of people can get value out of maining a class until I either bleed out or actually slowly improve. When it comes to this other style of maining a class, it relies a lot on your own intuition and decision to actually play the class instead of forcing yourself to just sit through it, which in some ways is a good thing. I just...
E agora? Eu não faço ideia do que eu faço agora. É, parece ser bem de boa até. É só usar o anel de vida. Pera, não sei se já tava equipado. Deixa eu ver. Não. Pronto. Agora vai ser easy.
More. I want more.
Great sovereign, take your throne. What lies ahead, only you can see.
Tá, faltou um boss. Meu Deus, aí que cast longo da porra. Agora tem que ver se eu consigo e matar outro boss. Sendo que pelo que eu vi nem parece tão interessante assim.